there are opportunities for.
Oh, indeed. I apologize for that. But perhaps while you're dealing with that, I'll move on to Mukhtar now.
Yes, please.
Because Mukhtar, while we talk about collaborating with the AES, we also have to delicately balance this so as not to come across as condoning military coups. Your take on how we can manage to do this and still work together?
Well, it's a very delicate issue, as Madame talked about. And it's a delicate issue that we must be very deliberate in terms of how we engage as nations on this matter. And we need to first establish that we are not condoning military-style leadership or coups within the sub-region, because that is contrary to ECOWAS's own protocols on good governance and the rule of law. An alternative to bad civilian government is not military government. It is better. But if you look at the very important issue of security, we need to look past the vehicle through which these governments are in place and look at common areas of interest in terms of regional security and building resilience against common threats, threats that cut across borders, and we need to be collaborating on that. If it's that led to these coup situations, the issue or reference to the reality of terrorism and our inability to deal with it effectively, that appears positive from my perspective when it comes to regional cooperation, interagency collaboration, and information sharing, or address this challenge without these things. And we need to build that, and we need to move away from the political narratives around the leader that we're supporting the common cause of security and not, embracing or condoning military-style leadership.
I mean, are you suggesting then that what goes on in Burkina Faso, in Niger, in Mali, should be none of our business as long as we are collaborating with them to keep the rest of us safe?
As ECOWAS, it is our business. It's our business, to see or to know or be interested in what happens in each country. But there's a limit to which we do in this case in terms of, the country's own sovereignty, issues. ECOWAS has that capacity, or should have that capacity, to chart a path, to direct how governance, is taken or takes place within the sub-region. As a regional body, it must be capable of asserting itself as a body that is in charge of, shaping the narrative and the policies that are around governance and around security. When you lose that, it gives nations like these three countries that takes their destiny into their own hands. And it must be clear that we haven't done a good job at ensuring or asserting, ourselves in terms of ECOWAS, in charge of security and in charge of governance and development. If you look at all these three countries, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, they're all around very low in the Human Development Index, about 183, and above for all these three countries. It tells us that the reality is that is a response to the ineffective governance policies in place. That's why this reality, emerged and the coups became possible in these countries. And so we cannot lose sight of the reality on the ground and what ECOWAS's own, responsibilities are in ensuring that we fix these things. And that's why these nations became defiant of ECOWAS when the coups happened. And now is another opportunity to recalibrate our efforts, our approach to dealing with governance in the sub-region. All countries, what happens in all countries, should worry or should, ECOWAS should be interested, and we can look at it holistically as a regional body.
Dr. Obin, let's tackle ECOWAS now, because as Mukhtar has said, we need to also check the reality. There are many people like Mukhtar who agree or think that ECOWAS itself, should be blamed for where we are today. Now, my question is, with your expansive work across the sub-region, because in order for us to prevent conflict, nip it in the bud before it erupts, we should be able to link our ability to see it with our policies, and ECOWAS will be at the center of all those things. What is the linkages, or what are the linkages you are able to draw in that?
Like Togo and other presidential system to a parliamentary kind of system. And it's clear at the presidential system to a parliamentary kind of system. And it's presidential system to a parliamentary kind of system. And it's clear in the ECOWAS protocols that these are things that the regional norms, in the ECOWAS protocols, that these are things that the regional norms frowns upon. But the protocol says before the election. And so when that happens, it becomes very difficult election. And so when that happens, it becomes very difficult for ECOWAS to respond. For me, because of this issue, I think that citizens of member states have an important role to play, as well as civil society actors in member states. Because ECOWAS itself is constrained. And ECOWAS is not the commission sitting in Abuja. And ECOWAS is not the commission sitting in Abuja. Difficult for heads of state to criticize each other. And it's the we CSOs to make sure that we call criticizing ECOWAS for most of the challenges within the region. Internally, member states must take responsibility enough to challenge.
Directly and clearly, from what you have said, it means that we are not able to connect our early warning systems, for instance, like those that we get from WANEP, to political early response, so to speak, and political decisions.
Yeah.
And that will fall at the doorstep of the individual member states.
Yes. So we have a lot of response mechanisms at the level of the regional body and also at member states. So in ECOWAS, for example, we have the ECOWAS Council of the Wise, which is made up of very prominent people across the region who are supposed to support ECOWAS, the Mediation and Security Council, and the Commission to proactively respond to some of the early warning signs. But they have not been so effective due to technical challenges and also funding support. At the national level, we have the peace infrastructures. Like in Ghana, we have the National Peace Council. You go to the community level, they have peace committees and all that, which is supposed to be part of our response framework. But in terms of the political commitment to invest in these frameworks has been quite insufficient and inadequate. So the data is there, but when it comes to the response, it's always a challenge. And the political class also sometimes, the political will and commitment is also not there to be able to address some of the challenges that we are facing.
Indeed, let me have Vera take her second bite and then I'll hand over back to the MC of the event because I think that there's a bit more to be talked about, but let's open it up in a bit. Yeah. So Vera, clearly, when we are taking some of these decisions, women are not there. In fact, I read a document that said that at the UN level, less than 20% of women lead or co-lead delegations for peacekeeping purposes. Yeah. Now, what role could women be playing that we are not allowing women to play in peace building, in preventing conflict?
Yeah, thank you very much. And before I come to that, let me just add a little to the early warning and response mechanisms. In fact, what is happening is because of the impact of violent extremism and conflicts on women and girls, talk about gender-based violence, displacement, loss of livelihoods, it is imperative that when we are putting in place such a mechanism to prevent these things, we should have those who will be greatly affected on board. And so if they are not on the table, how can they take decisions that can help, in fact, the whole family, in effect? Because you know how women, mothers are able to even solve the little conflicts within the family. They don't want these things to escalate, so they are always ready to sit down people and talk to them. And so maybe we are missing for not getting them on the table.
So there is no heart in the solutions.
Exactly. And so maybe going forward, he says something. It points me to the fact that we need to invest in such things. When we put the woman there and then you don't have resources for the implementation, for instance, of the plan that I spoke about, then it means all the issues.
KKB.
Thank you, Kemini Amano. And again, I must say we're live on TV3 as well as NewsWire Radio and the website NewsWire GH gh.com. I know a number of you have a few questions in mind, some suggestions. We would like to keep it very short, so if you have any question or suggestion you would like to share, as far as the comments put across are concerned, there are two people, one to the left, one to the right. There's a lady on the left with the microphone, she's in blue, and there's a gentleman who is coming to my right, and he will also have a microphone. If you have any questions, just put up your hand, we'll just get you to ask them, and then, okay. So the first person is here. We will now, okay, thank you. Okay, so first question, any other thoughts or questions? We just do a very quick one, and then we can take a break. Right. Okay, all right, so you are next then.
Yeah, I just want to make
just a second, please. We'll just
Okay.
take the questions in bulk, and then we'll do the answers before we take our break. Thank you. Let's hear you, sir.
My name is Right Reverend Samuel Kofi Osabete, Chairman of the Greater Accra Regional Peace Council of Ghana. I'm just looking at what we're talking about, amplifying women's voices in democratic and political transitions. It is not emerging from our discussion. In our African roots, when there is something happening, we hear in the Akan language, Yanko Bisa Abrewa. Is that right? We never say Yanko Bisa Akokra. Yanko Bisa Eden Abrewa. So moving forward, let us get into our African roots. I cannot see a lot of our queen mothers represented here. These are the custodians of our cultures. They know what happens within our communities. All I'm saying is that, can we get our cultural and sociocultural systems more involved in our peace building wherever we want to prevent or sustain our peace? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Edusei Sadiq Jungfo. I work with the Legal Aid Commission, Kumasi. From what my senior colleague just said, today when you come to Kumasi, when you listen to most of the local radio and FM stations, some of the basic issues that can be resolved and settled at home are being aired on air, and some are even live on TV and other things. It seems to me that women are not assertive, and they need to be empowered and trained to realize that some of the basic conflict in home and other places can be resolved. So I want to urge the organizers of this forum to champion a cause relating to this issue I'm talking about. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll take one last question, and then, right, okay.
Thank you. My name is Martha Kwebiana, Dominion Leaders Foundation.
Right.
I'm privileged to be here and talking about sustainability and then looking at women leadership. I've realized that the core of it has to do with motivating the young girls to get to where the grown-up women are. But we are missing something, that is the role model effect. If a woman is pushed to, let's say, an MP level, and then her attitude or her character is negative, it gives a negative effect to the young one who is coming. And just as it took one day for somebody to say that there's the need for women to be included, it will take one day for somebody to say that let all this stop, because women who are being pushed up there are not putting up good attitude. So I think that there should be a body to regulate the attitude of women who are pushed up there. If they are erring, somebody should stop them and let them know that the young girls are looking up to them.
Right.
Recently, some happened, and I think there should be a stop to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Hopefully, this doesn't turn out to be a debate, so we'll keep it short, we'll keep it brief. I did see the Honorable Gender Minister, Dr. Namamulati, laughing and at some points shaking her head to some of the comments. I'm sure she has a lot to share, and that is going to happen in a bit. So the Honorable Dr. Agnes Namomolate, Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection, will be joined by the Honorable Manti Tarawali, who is Minister of State at the Office of the Vice President, Sierra Leone, as well as Her Ladyship Justice Professor Henrietta Mensah-Bonsu, who is Supreme Court Judge here in Ghana, and Ambassador Medina Wessa, former Secretary General for the Mano River Union, for the very important conversation for which we are here, amplifying women's voices in democratic and political transitions. But that will be after a break. We'll be back here in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
But that's not a good end
No.
to the program.
At all. How did you end us this way?
I had to. Timely, So you see what I'm saying? We have to continue this conversation at the High Commission later tonight.
Oh,
We have to do it all. Very important.
we're going to a brew.
I thought we're yet to, or at least a minute each.
I thought you were coming to remove my thing.
Okay, have you done it?
Yes.
So
We are done. No.
Just to note, there's tea and coffee outside. We are having a 15-minute break. We'll return here for that very conversation. Thank you.
2. Try 2, try 1. Try 1, 2, try 2. Try 2, try 1, 2.
critical juncture. While the region has made significant strides in economic growth and democratic governance, it continues to face complex challenges from political instability and violent extremism to climate shocks and food insecurity. In this context, one truth remains clear. Gender equality is the strongest predictor of peace, more than wealth, democracy, or religion. Women and girls are disproportionately affected by conflict and crises, yet they're also powerful agents of change. Their leadership in peace building, governance, and reconciliation is not just valuable, it is essential. That is why Australia is honoured to bring together these incredible leaders from Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Liberia for today's panel. Australia is deeply committed to advancing the women, peace, and security agenda globally, including here in Africa. Through our diplomatic development and humanitarian partnerships, we support women-led civil society organizations, fund survivor-centered justice initiatives, and advocate for gender provisions in peace agreements. We know that when women's participation and leadership in these processes happens, it leads to better and more sustainable outcomes before, during, and after conflict. That's why Australia is contributing more than 5 million Australian dollars to the United Nations Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs. We've tripled our contribution to the UN Peacebuilding Fund and support the Gender Justice Practitioner Hub. Australia's prioritising inclusive peacebuilding and conflict prevention. We believe that peace, prosperity, and stability must be built, pursued, and defended. It can never be taken for granted. We also recognize the leadership of our African partners in this area. From the Women of Liberia Mass Action for Peace to Sierra Leone's strides in women's political representation, West Africa offers powerful examples of women driving transformational change. And here in Ghana, we saw Ghana's first female vice president appointed earlier this year. As Australia bids for the non-permanent seat on the UN Security Council for the term of 2029 to 2030, we reaffirm our commitment to working with and learning from our African partners. We will ensure that women's voices are not only heard, but lead the shaping of a more peaceful and equitable future. Thank you.
A big thank you to Ambassador Campbell for those words. And it's now actually setting the tone for a high-level panel discussion. And I will now invite our panel moderator, Ms. Lavinia Adaye-Mensah, to guide this very important conversation. As she makes her way up, the applause can't continue because there are a few names I need to get through. So also joining her on this very panel will be the Honorable Manti Tarawali, Minister of State at the Office of the Vice President in Sierra Leone. Thank you for joining us, Madam. Her Ladyship, Justice Professor Henrietta Mensah Bonsu, Supreme Court Judge for the Republic of Ghana. The Honorable Dr. Agnes Na Momolate, Minister for Gender, Children, and Social Protection, Ghana. And from Liberia, we have Ambassador Medina Wesa, former Secretary General for the Mano River Union. Great. I now hand over to Ms. Lavinia Adaye-Mensah to begin the conversation.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished guests, all protocols observed. Indeed, we have a rather short time, I would say. Given the caliber of people that are on this panel, we probably would need at least 2 weeks to be able to tap from them their rich experiences and their perspectives, which we need given the critical context that I think previous panelists and previous speakers have already, laid out. So our very four extremely high-level panelists, I was given 11 pages of their summarized bios. I have tried everything I can to reduce this, but I'm still left with 6 pages, which I will not be able to read. So I'm asking to be forgiven in advance that I will have to leave out a lot of very important accolades of our speakers. Let me begin with the first person I have on my list, Ambassador Medina Wese, former Secretary General of the Mano River Union, who's worked for decades within the public service with a career in law and politics. Over the past 30 years, has championed the cause for humanity, generally through contributions towards enhancement of women's participation in socio-economic development of society, worked around politics, law, promotion of women's leadership, strengthening regional cooperation and integration for peace and security, as well as development. Prior to taking up her legal career, she worked in the Office of the President as the Director General of the Cabinet and as Executive Secretary to the President of Liberia. She's been Managing Partner of the International Law Group and has worked as Communication Strategy Specialist during the 2005 and 2011 elections in Liberia. You can see this rich public service work also has international dimensions, as she worked with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa in Ethiopia, with USAID Liberia Transition Initiative and the Open Society of West Africa, both in Abidjan and Dakar, UN Women's Fund, UNHCR, UNIFEM Sierra Leone. She was also consultant. She worked the consultant management enterprise in Ghana, so she's been all over West Africa, you can tell. Aside from pursuing a career in law, there have been other senior executive leadership courses she has undertaken at Harvard and Howard universities in the United States, and undergraduate and postgraduate studies at the University of Ghana in Legon, and with a discipline in political science and international relations. She also has a diploma in journalism and has undertaken various courses and been part of various workshops, including with Akina Mamawa Africa in Entebbe, Uganda, Harare, Zimbabwe, and it goes on. Ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador Medina Wese. My second panelist is Honorable Manti Tarawali, Minister of State at the Office of the Vice President in Sierra Leone. She is a development expert and politician. She's also the author of the book Over the Line, How Sierra Leone Enacted the Groundbreaking Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Act. I would encourage you to read it. I just read the synopsis just before we came. She's a 2003 recipient of the Harvard Ministerial Leadership Medal for Outstanding Achievement and a 2004 finalist of the Women Changing the World Awards organized by Princess Sarah, the Duchess of York. Minister Manti is currently the Minister of State at the Vice President's Office. She was appointed to this role following 4 years as Minister of Gender and Children's Affairs, where she led the development and enactment of the groundbreaking Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Act 2022. The Act mandates the increase of women's political participation and leadership opportunities through affirmative action, and the Act also demands improved social protection for women through gender mainstreaming and gender-responsive budgeting. In her current role as Principal Assistant to the Vice President, her portfolio comprises the supervision of national interministerial multi-sectoral programs developed under the Office of the Vice President, and these include the Millennium Challenge Cooperation Project, Scaling Up Nutrition Movement, Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, etc. Her role also requires global representation and engagement on national development. Distinguished guest, Honorable Manti Tarawali. Our third panelist is Honorable Dr. Agnes Na Momo Late, who is the Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection in Ghana. Honorable Late is a distinguished politician and advocate for social justice, best known for her grassroots mobilization and commitment to championing women's and children's rights. She began her political career in 2000, serving as an assemblywoman and later as a presiding member of the Koro Municipal Assembly. She has been Member of Parliament since 2021, where her focus has included initiatives to empower women, improve access to quality education, and support vulnerable groups. Beyond her parliamentary duties, she has held significant leadership positions, including being the General Secretary of the National Association of Local Authorities of Ghana, NALAG. As Secretary General of NALAG, she was responsible for providing strategic leadership to local government authorities across the country. She also was involved in coordinating activities among local assemblies, advocating for decentralization, and fostering collaboration to enhance service delivery at the community level. She holds a PhD in African Studies, demonstrating a strong commitment to scholarly pursuits that inform her work in policy making and advocacy. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Dr. Agnes Na Momo Late. You're welcome. The last but not least on the panelist is the one that I think we struggled most with, summarizing her bio. I still have 3 pages, and I'm not sure what I am going to leave out, but I have to leave out a lot. Her ladyship, Justice Professor Henrietta Mensah Bonsu. Her full name, I have to mention them. She is Professor Henrietta Joy Abna Nyakun Mensah Bonsu. She has other names. One of them I don't want to, of Ghana, and prior to being called to the bench in May, to appointment rather, to the bench in May 2020, she was a professor of law at the University of 2018, being the first female to do so. She's a past president of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Science, having been elected to fellowship in 2003. She has a distinguished career that spans several decades, over 3 decades at the University of Ghana, and then she rose through the ranks to attain the rank of Professor of Law, and she also has researched and published extensively on criminal law and criminal justice. So this is on her academic side. She has served on many committees at the University of Ghana and many other academic committees within that community. She even served as hall counsels for Volta Hall and Ekwafo Hall, and was the first female senior tutor at Ekwafo Hall. Prior to that, she has also been part of international engagements, where she was at one point among the high-profile international assignments she undertook at one point included the OAU's Committee of Eminent Jurists on the Lokabe case, 2021-2022, the AU's Committee of Eminent Jurists on the Hisense Hybrid case. She was appointed as Deputy Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General for Rule of Law in the United Nations Mission in Liberia, with the rank of Assistant Secretary General. And for 4 years, she had the privilege of leading the United Nations family on efforts to reconstruct the rule of law sector in post-conflict Liberia. In 2015, she was appointed by the United Nations Secretary General to the high-level independent panel on peace operations, the HIPPO panel. Since 2012, she served as civilian mentor to the ECOWAS Senior Mission Leadership Courses, UN Senior Mission Leadership Courses, various peacekeeping training courses. She has played various roles in that. As you can see, I'm skipping quite a lot. But I will end by saying she's been a visiting lecturer at a number of reputable universities as well in Europe and North America. She has earned a number of academic awards, including Macallian Prize for Best Graduating Student in Volta Hall, McDougall Fellowship, Junior Fulbright Fellowship, and ACU Unit Win Fellowship for Women. Her non-academic awards and citations are many, and they include University of Ghana Award for Meritorious Service, the Association of Lions Club International President's Excellence Award, Ghana Women of Excellence Award, West Africa Peace Fellows. I have to mention that she's one of the WANEP Peace Fellows, and then the Nukes Prestige Award for Peace, Advocacy, Academic Excellence, and Institutional Advancement. Ladies and gentlemen, Her Ladyship,
Yes.
Henrietta Mensah. So you're all welcome. And now, I think this morning's conversation already, and the speakers already gave us an indication that we have come a long way. And I think to set us off, I think it's important that perhaps we recap very briefly, or I recap very briefly, the journey of women, peace, and security. I think that agenda was born out of several decades of global struggles for gender equality, human rights, and peace. And I think a number of global events catalyzed, that movement and where we are today. And just to capture some of these important ones, to set the context for our conversation, most of the rise of global feminist movements in the 70s, I think, and then also in the 80s, brought women's rights and gender equality issues into international discourse. And that's when we had adopted CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, in 1979. There were a number of high-level UN conferences. There was a Nairobi conference, and then that led us to Beijing. But I think some of the things that helped or facilitated the advancement of that, of the women, peace, and security agenda, of course, was the collapse of the Cold War. And I think it's important to reference that because I think it helped usher us into an era of new norms and coming on the back of some of the challenges that we had gone through. It helped us move away from the superpower influences and open up space for other influences. And I think in that process, a number of issues around women, peace, and security began to really gain ground and be cemented. And so with the Beijing conference, I think it helped really set us off. It was also coming on the back of, even though we had had a Cold War end, we had shifted into intrastate wars, and we saw what happened in Rwanda, in Bosnia, in Sierra Leone, where there were lots of violence against women. And so these were some of the things that then led us into the 2000s when we decided to adopt the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 with the key pillars around protection, participation, prevention, relief, and recovery. Of course, a lot has been done, but we're also aware that we still have a long way to go. But to start us off, given that you are all women who've occupied influential spaces in the governance, the judiciary, diplomacy, and international development era, let me throw my first question. How would you assess the current state of women's voices and influence in democratic and political transitions across West Africa? And let me start with my father's rights. So, Ambassador, let's hear your thoughts.
Thank you very much. Let me say thank you to the Australian High Commissioner for this wonderful bridge meeting. Exciting to be here with our sisters. I know, and I'm glad to meet the new Honorable Minister, but I've known Professor Mensah Bonsu as a student here at the university, and she's been always a good teacher. Also met my sister, Honorable Manti Tarawali, in Sierra Leone, very passionate gender minister, now in the high office of the Vice President. And like I said, I'm pleased to meet the Minister for Gender in Ghana. So thank you once again, and to our host. I think, Kofi Annan, you're keeping the flame going. So the question as to where we are currently, we used to enjoy Professor Ko answer in this Ghanaian adage where the writer would ask, did we come or did we go? So 35 years since Beijing, and again, I was a very young activist then. I was proud to be among the 30,000 women in Beijing 1995. So I can say that we've come a long way. We've made some very serious positive strides. So in Africa, if we take at the top leadership, like it was mentioned, we've elected a first woman president. Now we have a second woman president. There are 2 or 3 others in the making. So if we're talking about high level, so second in Namibia. And third, she would be going in her own right because she is currently the president of Tanzania, but she's fulfilling the term of her predecessor. So if we look at leadership at the peak, you would say we've made some significant strides. Thank you. And it's pleasing to see that many countries adopted series of national plans of actions, and to hear that Ghana, you've pegged it at 40% that you're aspiring to. In Sierra Leone, there is a movement of women, 50-50. That means we want equality, you demand equality, you insist on equality. As to whether you get that, it's an aspiration. So if you ask how far we've come in, I would say let's keep it positive. We've come a long way. So we're here, we're on the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now let me come to the Honorable Minister Latte. What for you have been some of the key achievements? Honorable Ambassador Wese mentioned that we've come a long way, and she cited some examples. What from your perspective will be some of the other key achievements that you will see in this journey, 30 years, if we're talking about Beijing, 25 years, we are looking at 1325.
Thank you very much. Let me also acknowledge the great work of the Australian Embassy or High Commission, and then also Kofi Annan Peace colleagues. It's a great pleasure. Whether how far we've come, I think it is important that we acknowledge that sitting here and having this discussion is one of the greatest achievements we have made over the years. And then also, I can say in Ghana in particular, having our first female vice president after independence is also another great achievement. And I say this with pride that after over 60 years, we can now sit and say, Her Excellency, not just at ambassadorial level, but at the presidential level or presidency. And that is a great achievement for me. And when you look at almost all the laws that look at women empowerment, we are there. One of such great ones is CEDAW. We are there participating annually. What we have to look at, and I'm sure we'll get there, is taking it from mere Beijing platform, taking it from a mere participation at the annual event to actionable, stage where we go discuss and then we pick points and then we come back and implement them. That is where we are. And then when you look at Ghana, we used to aspire to have an affirmative action law. Today, as we speak, as of last year, Parliament passed the bill into a law, and we can say that we have an affirmative action law. And that is a great achievement for us. No matter what the state it is in now, we will say that it is important that we have something to start with
than having nothing at all. And then we amend them or amend it as we go, because the issues around women and gender are quite dynamic and fluid. And so you will not have one law that will fit everything or fix everything. But I believe that this far, by the work that we started so many years, and I was just casually discussing with Madame Janet that we need to actually not just mentor, but have proper succession plan for the upcoming ones to take over, so that this is not a battle or an action that we start somewhere, leave it somewhere, and then someone comes to start from ground zero again. We need to be intentional about what we do. We've come far, and I believe there are greater strides we have to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning the point about. Thank you for mentioning the point about secession, and I think I have a question around that later on. By the way, I have about 3,000 questions, but I wouldn't be selfish. I'll just ask a few and open it up, because I can see a lot of eager faces and itching lips. So I would do that. But since you mentioned the judiciary, Prof, let me come to you. For you, how has the judiciary been part of this journey, and how has it contributed to ensuring that, we are advancing? Yes, we have a few laws here and there. Has there been a major agenda within the judiciary from your perspective?
Thank you. Thank you very much for pinning me down in that way. And let me also add my voice to those. It's not on.
Hold it over. Okay.
It's on now. Let me add my voice to those expressing thanks to the Australian High Commission. It looks like these conversations haven't been had as often as they ought to have been had. And so if there's backsliding, if there's backlash, and so on, you can understand. I won't go where you are taking me, because I was the first African female to be appointed to the headship of a peacekeeping mission after 1325 was adopted. And so I ought to know a thing or two about 1325. I will say that as Deputy Special Representative, being first in that role, at least at that end, we now have a Ghanaian lady as Special Representative of the mission in Libya, Her Excellency Hannah Tete. And so that's progress, because there were very few of us. When I was appointed to the high-level independent panel on peace operations, we were 14 and there were 3 women. The women's lobby got upset, and His Excellency Ban Ki-moon had to appoint a Burundian lady to join, so that at least Africa had 2 voices. So we have come some distance. Now, if you want to look at the judiciary, I didn't plan to come and talk about the judiciary, so I haven't taken any statistics, but I do know from teaching law for many years that there are many more females now studying law than there used to be. And this has translated into many more females joining the bench. So that now there's an association called International Association of Women Judges. And the meetings are big, because now there are a lot of young women who have become judges. At some point in time, we tried to do some affirmative action to bring in more females into the law faculty. Those days there was only one law faculty. But at some point in time, there were more females in the class than males. So I don't think they do that anymore. But because the judiciary benefits from the output of the law faculties, when there are many more females from law faculties, then many more females have a chance to join the judiciary. You don't just get up and become a judge. So if you haven't gone through the training, you can't be a judge. And I know that the military, they are also doing well. My good friend here is a very senior officer now, and Brigadier, no, she became Major General before she passed, Constance, you know. So the thing with social change is that it comes in little bits. So if you don't pay attention, you will not notice. But we have made some progress. In the late 90s, I went to cash a check in foreign exchange to fund a training program I was organizing in Cape Coast. The teller refused to pay the check to me because she wanted to see Professor Mensah-Bonsu herself. She wanted to see the person herself before paying, and she thought I was Professor Mensah-Bonsu's secretary. Thank God there are so many female professors now that I doubt that somebody who sees a check written to Professor Mensah-Bonsu would assume it was a male and that I was his secretary coming to cash on his behalf.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that personal experience. And I think we all, if we were to go around with the females in the room, I'm sure we would all have similar experiences to share where we've been mistaken for men because of what we have perceived to have achieved. But then I think the conversation around the judiciary for me is encouraging because one of the key challenges that we keep raising is that we may have made advancements with, you know, putting up legal frameworks, but when it comes to implementation and rule of law, it seems to be a challenge. So perhaps these are little steps, as you rightly said, but that could help change the frame conditions for better implementation of some of these legal frameworks. But let me move to Honorable Manti. And I think the legal framework is one of the enablers. But from your own experience, with your vast experience, having also been involved in the gender ministry, from that point of view, taking Sierra Leone as an example, what for you have been some of the institutional enablers to help advance the women, peace and security agenda?
Thank you for the question. And let me also join colleagues to thank the High Commission, the Australian High Commission, for putting this together. I think it is timely. I think it is necessary. And the more we do and bring us together, share experiences, collaborate, I think will help us in the region. Let me also thank the Kofi Annan Peace Center. It's beautiful, and it's good that it's kept the way that it is. Thank you for hosting us. I think from my experience or the experience of Sierra Leone, mentioned that for sustainable peace, women are needed. And in Sierra Leone, that is also women, peace and security really having sustained drive. And for us in Sierra Leone, leading the enactment of the law, I must say, to have a president that is a man, stand up and say, I'm a feminist and I support women's agenda, women's leadership, was really the beginning of the drive. That was very pivotal for us. Pivotal for us, and in really developing no longer and do more things. Economic conversation, it was more receptive for us.
And thank you. I think we need, and it's encouraging to hear this practical. I think we need, and it's encouraging to hear this practical example from Sierra Leone. And since you also touched on sustaining how we had also quite a lot of experience really getting us to where we've had also quite a lot of experience really getting us to where we are. My strong point of view for you, what have been from your experiences some of the regional enablers, just building on some of the examples she's talked about. Fragmentation within the ECOWAS community, but I think there are still things that exist. And how do you see the current state of affairs vis-a-vis possible enablers to continue to move us forward in sustaining the agenda?
Again, thank you. Listening to the last panel, and I was sitting by Professor Mensah Bonsu. And we were talking about MRU. So MRU is composed of 4 countries. That's Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Cote d'Ivoire. It's a subset of ECOWAS. I would hope that our leaders, while confronted with this challenge that AES is presenting, would use the mathematical formulas of sets and subsets to see AES as a subset of ECOWAS and begin to work with them to ensure that the gains that ECOWAS has made over the last 50 years, over the last 50 years, continue. I mean, now we feel very free and proud that as citizens, we can walk around freely in each other's country and each other's spaces. When you're at the border, when I was at MRU, it's really a sad accident of colonial history that these physical borders exist. Between the 4 countries, you have, I would say, more than 375 pathways. Don't call them borders. Because the people pass. Among those 4 countries, they have in common about 10 languages all around the borders. They don't see, and I often say it's between Liberia and Sierra Leone, it's the individual holder of the book who determines which country he or she wants to be. You go in the market at the border of Sierra Leone and Liberia, you hear them speak Creole, you hear them speak the Liberian lingua, you hear them speak Mende, you hear them speak Vai. That's the same people. Come back to Mawopnet. It took the courage, commitment, and real dedication, or in Liberia we say dry face. You just were unashamed, to just get there. The last peace meeting that we now sign up on, the Accra Peace Accord, was held here. And the women, so you had Mawopnet, you've had WIPNET, you have WANEP, you've had LWI, you've had 50-50. So one way we hope, and some groups in Liberia have started that, is to tell the stories, relive the lives of these women, traveling platform. And we hope that over time, ministries of gender, the universities can take up just getting to know the names of these women who have been torchbearers and bold bearers of faith to ensure that women, peace, and security infrastructure is solid and we can learn their stories and live their lives.
Thank you. Again, I'm happy you emphasized the point, I think, from the previous panel where I think Madam Janet also had raised the point about the borders and the cross-border communities and the affiliations that lie at that level. And I think it's something that we need to continuously push. It's important that we look at the crisis that we're facing within the region, both at the level of political, but I think beyond the political, all these social ties and networks that exist and how we harness these, I think will be important to help us through. But let me then shift to Honorable Minister Latte. Part of the sustaining agenda also has been argued around how are we able to really bring meaning to the advancement of the Women's Peace Agenda. And it's all about localization. And from your rich CV, I mean, this is an area that you've been championing. Can you share with us your own experience in terms of localizing the Women, Peace and Security Agenda? And I just shared last week, I was in South Africa at a high-level panel conversation, and somebody made a comment that women at a word that I don't particularly like these days, grassroots. Women at the grassroots level don't understand the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. And my point was, what then is the Women, Peace and Security Agenda? Who is it for? So how have your own experiences around localization of that agenda been, if you could share with us?
Thank you very much once again. I think we've come a long way, but there's few barriers that makes us take a step forward and 3, 4, 5 steps backwards. And it makes the work very energy sapping. But I believe that once we haven't given up and we keep going, we're going to make more giant steps. If anyone said that women are at the grassroots don't have an appreciation of peace and the peace processes, it's a big, let me say, level of ignorance. Because when you come to the role, it comes to the role women play in peacekeeping, in fact, sometimes we even get involved uninvited. We invite ourselves to the peace table. And that is why I think it was Bishop who mentioned that in Ghana, if there's an issue, when the men get up, they don't say, let's go and ask the old man. They say, let's go and ask the old lady. There's a local experience coming from that. And that local experience is that we are also agents of peace. We are not only victims, but we are agents of peace. And then when you look at the whole system of peace, the early warning systems that are built, if women are more actively involved, you realize that before most conflicts erupt, women will be there to signal, that this is what is going to happen. And the issue in Yendi was one of them. Women are almost everywhere in the local areas, the villages. We are engaging each other. We are eavesdropping, whether intentional or not. And so we pick up some of these things, the conversations that are happening, whether at the high level where traditional leaders will not invite women, or even at our own levels, looking at what is happening. And so women are always available to look at some of these issues, to advance our issues. Let's look at our leadership right from the local level, the household level. What we do, we even start mediating before you could put, a concept to mediation. When there are issues between families, where there are issues between the home, the children, relatives, and all that, you find the woman trying to find amicable solution. And yet when it comes to the formal one, the official one that needs to be recognized, women are left out. And so in negotiation, in mediation, women are usually not found there. I can say that we've made giant strides, because now when you set up a committee, unconsciously, because there's much awareness now, everybody is looking at, how many men are there? How many women are there? Before they come to look at the caliber of people there. And so these are some of the strides that we've made. And we need to build on them in order to advance the cause of women. And so when you talk about amplifying, what are we amplifying? Are we amplifying the negatives or the positives? So it is not just a holistic thing that we say, let's amplify the voices of women. We want to articulate. We want the voices of women to count where it matters most. And so these issues bring us forward, or they send us backwards. We need to be invited, yes, but when you don't get invited, invite yourself. And that is the only way we are going to keep moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Prof, let me just come to you as we build on that. So we need to be invited. And I want to link this to a comment that I can't remember somebody had made earlier, either in one of the speeches, talking about it's not just being at the table, but transforming the table. What are some of the ways that we can do that transformation, going beyond just representation to actually influencing transformation?
It's very lonely at the top. And it is extremely lonely for a woman at the top. When somebody raised the matter, somebody from the floor raised a matter about women and negative behavior and so on, I was saddened. Because if you appreciate what it takes to hold your own in a situation where everybody looks different, you would understand that sometimes you have to struggle to belong. And in the process, you may outdo those who belong. Because you must show a certain confidence that you are in the right place. And in the process, you are tripped up sometimes also. While we were listening to the first panel, I was thinking, the UN had the United Nations Students Association. ECOWAS has nothing. So you have ECOWAS at the top, nothing else beneath. How do you even recruit ECOWAS adherents into supporting the organization? So it's no surprise that some people have decided, no, we don't want to be a part of it, and it was a 3-day wonder, and they left. So we must build a constituency of young females so that they can be at the table. If you are alone at the table, I'm sorry, you can't transform anything. If you are alone at the table and you are being tolerated, even patronized, how are you going to change anything? You must show that you can use the frameworks that exist even better than the people who made them in order to keep your presence at the table. So we need the comfort of numbers. In the UN, I used to tell my section people that we are in this together. Now, when there's only one star in the sky at night, we say it's a dark night, or we don't.
We do.
The only time we describe the night as beautiful is when there are lots of stars. So the more of us there, the easier it would be to transform anything. Let me tell you something that happened to me. As I told you, I was the first female to be appointed to the headship of a peacekeeping mission. It turned out that I had no washroom. So I had to use the main washroom, and you could imagine me surrounded by my bodyguards going to use the washroom. Then you come back a few minutes later, you want to go again, and then you are wondering, can I call these people again? It took one bold officer to say, why don't we make you a washroom here? And that saved my life. So sometimes the things that can make life easier for us don't occur to people who are used to, certain faces, certain looks, and so on. But when we are there and we link up and we show that we have a right to be there, things imperceptibly change. So we need the numbers. There's no way you can do it by yourself. They'll tolerate you, they'll patronize you.
Yeah. And I was smiling at the washroom story because I think I witnessed so when I was working in story because I think I witnessed that also when I was working right here at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training, and there was no washroom for females, so we had to walk all the way here to the washroom closest to the auditorium. Wow. And at some point I said, I'm not doing it again. And I was going to share the washroom with the men. And so there was a lot of murmuring around, and eventually they decided to also convert one of the washrooms in the front offices for females. And there's a whole story about the one with the research department also. But thank you, Prof. And I'm glad you brought in the intergenerational component. Let me pose my last question and then we open it up because of the time. So coming on to the intergenerational component, how do you see that component from your own experience? Prof talked about the need to have more people so that transformation, you need a critical mass for the transformation to happen. And I heard again last week during the high-level session in South Africa that there is a perception from young women that the WPS agenda is a retirement plan because it's only being driven by older women, and that they still don't have space. They are seen in the YPS space, but not in the WPS space. So how are you, from your own experience, if at all, part of that process of ensuring that we are focusing deliberately on young women and creating that space for them also to be involved, to build the sustainability pathways?
Thank you for that question. And I think it's a really good question because our populations in Africa are young. In Sierra Leone, 70% of our population are young people. So there isn't really anything that you are planning that you don't bring young people together and work with them. organically, you would want it to evolve, you would want the numbers to come, but it wouldn't. It has to be by legislation. If you don't have legislation that will pin it to happen, you will not really have the numbers. And what the legislation does, by making it broader, is to also include in it education, changing curriculum to ensure that the curriculum has what it needs to have, ensure that early marriage is penalized, ensure to educate communities so that communities are part of, to educate communities so that communities are part and parcel of the drive. Because it's one thing to enact a representation of women in the leadership positions of political parties. So you have a certain way in a real game changer. Going to universities, going into schools, changing curriculum, making gender is integrated into everything, making sure that every single policy or every single institution integrates gender. So you don't really need a standalone. Integrate into everything. Integrate into everything. So once the communities are part and parcel. Of this. Once they understand that this is the drive, they are on board. Right. Young girls start to get involved, right. And there is also the power of board. Right. Young girls start to get involved, right. And there is also the power of the visual. I give a story. What do you want to be? Now I think she's now 30, but she was 28 or so when she was appointed. You have young women in every sector of society, leaders. Right. Young people are seeing that. They are changing. They are having a different view. You have now scholarships for people studying STEM from first year secondary school all the way to university. So you're getting more women involved. You have free education for girls. So you have girls now getting into school. Now the numbers of boys and girls in primary school and secondary school are now equal. It wasn't like that before. Because of all those changes, you are seeing women getting more involved. You're seeing girls hungry for, this change. And once you have that, it will take time, but when it matures, you will see more women in higher position and desiring it and pushing for it.
Thank you so much. To our panelists at this point, I turn to overall boss, so we can take a few questions. I don't know how much more time we have, and then, yeah.
So we do have a few minutes to go through the Q&A session. So if you do have a question, kindly put up your hand. And yes, don't worry, we'll have two people around. So one hand is up there on the left. Okay, there's one at the far end. Yes. We'll take a set of 4 questions, and then we'll get some quick responses and then come back to the audience. So that's the first one, just a second. So that's the first one. There was another hand up there. That'll be the second. And then the third, is there a fourth hand up? Okay, we'll take 3 questions then. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Timtonina Hajia Saratu of Dagbon Kingdom, Yendi. I wish to thank the Australia ambassador for such a wonderful meeting that we have today. Thank everybody here. I can't mention all the names here. I'm so grateful to be part of this program. And I wish to thank African Women Leaders Network for inviting me. My question is, we are all talking about women and conflict. And you know, when there's conflict, it's we, the women, who suffer most. And as the saying goes, Yenko bisabro wano. And here I can see that most of the traditional leaders are not here. And when there's conflict, at least they should be involved. And I wish to thank the president for giving us a mother of all who feeds us with her breast. Thank you so much. And also, the 40%, Oliver Twist asks for more. We still need more women. And I'm so grateful for the African women leaders, the presidents. So grateful for people to vote for them. But I remember our first president, Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. There was this safe seats for women. Can these African countries help us with safe seats for women? When the women are there, the men struggle with us. Women, we say power. Women, power. Women, power. Men, support. Men, support. So you should support us. Don't fight with us for seats. So I'm so grateful. But still, women, we have a long way to go. Yesterday, there was a program. My honorable, you were there. There's a place in Judiciary whereby when the women are in their menstrual period, you can cross the river. And when they are having exams, how do they write the exams? So still, we need our leaders to do something about it, especially the traditional leaders, what we have to do. We are all celebrating Menstrual Hygiene Day. But what are we doing, we the women leaders? We need sanitary pads. Don't just give it to the schools to distribute. We, the women leaders, also need some to go to our villages and then educate them, give the sanitary pads to them to use. Because I could remember those days, the 10 seats. My mother was lucky to be part of them. Honorable Ramatu Baba Seidu, first woman district commissioner and MP in Yendi. So please, those in charge, let's have more women. So that, you know, when you give the position to the women, they do it better than men. Please, excuse me, the gentlemen.
Men support. Thank you very much. We'll take the next question or suggestion.
Thank you very much. My name is Eunice Agbenyaji. I work with Star Ghana Foundation. So my contribution is actually to emphasize a point that has been made, responding to the question of how do we amplify the voice and participation of women in conflict prevention and peace building. And I think one of the things we need to take up as partners around this issue is to capitalize on government's, influence to change gender dynamics. What am I talking about? Sometimes it is not the issue about qualification. It's not the issue about can the woman do it or not. I think there are a lot more systemic barriers we need to confront. And I think we can use quotas to support women's representation, at least in peace building structures. So for example, we have the National Peace Council, and for the first time, we have seen 3 women represented on the Peace Council out of 13. We want to see more of that, but even more importantly, see the regional peace councils constituted also by, equal numbers of men and women and all other intersectional markers. And I just want to add that sometimes I think we are too critical of women in leadership. And we need to make space for people to grow in leadership. Women can make mistakes. And I think we should reject the patriarchal hegemony that women have attitudes and that's why they can't succeed. For years, we have tolerated men in leadership who have made mistakes. We should allow women to make mistakes and grow.
Thank you very much. There's a third question there and then a fourth one here. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Anna Mensah, senior lecturer here at KIPTC. So I am concerned about how do we assess the levels at which women are participating or representing in the different roles that we play. So what we are seeing now, the trend we are seeing now is because we want to increase the numbers. We realize that it's when it's time to be at the table, then we think about bringing women so that we'll be able to tick the box. But when it comes to the planning process, the decision-making process, we don't necessarily call upon the women to come in. And I'm going back to the example that Prof gave. If during the planning process of that mission, they had involved women or brought in the representation of women, there will definitely be a woman who will be concerned about the washroom for that position. But because maybe women were not necessarily in that decision-making position, so nobody would think about the needs of women at that level. And so it's not just about bringing in the women when the cameras are set, and we want to tick the box that we had women represented in this decision-making process or at this level. And it brings me to my second point on leadership. I have noticed progressively that leadership plays an important role when it comes to the inclusion of women. And I'm taking two examples. So one example is in a mission. I've been to a peacekeeping mission where you realize the force commander has women in his forces, just to be able to make sure we are ticking the box once again. We have this number of women. But they tell you for the 6 months I've been here, I've been in the kitchen. So we cook breakfast, we cook lunch, we cook dinner, and we'll go back home without any peacekeeping experience, apart from the same cooking we're doing back at home. In that same mission, there's another force commander who is allowing the women to play the same roles that the men are playing. And that brings about that leadership mindset that influences the role that women play. So how are we targeting the leaders? How are we targeting people in that leadership position to be able to ensure that they are understanding the message, the WPS message, to be able to make sure that we are making women participate effectively and not just increasing the numbers? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll take the final question for this set and then we get some comments from our high-level panel.
Thank you very much. My name is Charity Bink. I'm the chair of the African Women Leaders Network, Ghana chapter. One of the pillars of our network is women, peace, and security. And I want to congratulate all the great women that I've listened to this morning. I'm really very refreshed that all is not lost. When I was walking in today, I was expecting to see pictures, documentation of women who are making it. Because definitely, as the Honorable Minister said, there are some stories we can tell. The stories are there. So we need to begin to even celebrate the few who are making a difference. We need to tell their story. We need to do the documentation. So even if there are 1 or 2 or 3 who are excelling. In fact, I'm seeing, we are hearing of a lot of transformation in the forces. Now they have a gender policy and all that. I was even shocked. We talk about the forces. I went to the prison service the other day and I was really overwhelmed to find out that there's most of the top hierarchy, many of the women, we have the Director General, we have so we need to begin to identify the few that we have to celebrate them, and that will encourage the other to say, yeah, if this woman can do it, then I can also do it. So the documentation, we need to celebrate our little achievements, and that can also encourage us, even as we are asking for more. As Professor said, that if you have only 1 star in the sky, the whole place will be dark. We need more stars for the sky to shine, to be bright. But even the few stars that we have, we need to start telling the story, how we have overcome, how far we have come, and where we want to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that point. It's one of the reasons why we are amplifying women's voices at this very forum. We will defer to the panel to share some thoughts, and then we come back for the next set, the next and final set. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yes, I know there are many more questions. But I'll allow. Thank you for the comments and questions. I think I'll allow the panelists to decide what they want to comment on. So just to save time. So I will start this time from my immediate left, and so we can go down. Just 2 minutes maximum. Just your reflections around some of the comments or questions that have come.
I think very good questions. I'll take the question at the back about the leadership and who is doing it right and who is not doing it right. I think we monitor. We ensure that if they're not doing it right, they're corrected. In Sierra Leone, we have a process of doing that. There are people that do it for the numbers. There are people that are genuinely sold to the process. And we have a monitoring mechanism that we employ to ensure that the leaders are doing what they're supposed to do. And if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, they're called to account why they're not, because we have indicators that you must follow. And so if you're not following those indicators, you're not really meeting those indicators, you're not passing, we highlight it that you're not passing. And obviously you're called to book, and you will then answer. But I think we can't leave it as it is. We must monitor and we must call them to account.
Thank you. Prof.
Thank you very much. I noticed in the field that when you put out an advertisement for a leader at some point, the women assess themselves and decide that they are not good enough for it. The men don't even assess themselves. They look and say, well, I will look very good as chief of whatever. Even if they don't have the qualification, they apply. While the woman who has the qualification won't apply because she assesses herself and decides that she's not good enough. What I did as Deputy Special Representative was to create a 1325 seat in my office. And this seat, every 6 months, was occupied by a female police officer who had the capacity to rise in her service. I have lost touch with those who were not Ghanaian, but those who were Ghanaian, I'm proud to say, have risen in the force because they got to know that there's no magic in the work. You just need the confidence, the experience, the exposure. And people have to get used to the fact that the chief is not male, but the work is getting done. For them to trust another female who wants to do the work. One participant talked about women making mistakes. Unfortunately, when a woman makes a mistake, it's all women. When a man makes a mistake, oh, it's him. And because of that, women tend to judge themselves more harshly, and it can be, that fear can be immobilizing. So let's try and empower other women. You can do it. Look at our churches. Where would they be without women? The women occupy every position that needs organization, that needs working, and so on. But when you get to the formal sector, you are looking for power. These women, These women who have great gifts of organization. And I'm saying,
I made earlier about where the women are. What do we want to amplify? What are we building on? What are the issues of relevance we want to build? As to whether the employment touches on the key or core decision-making table, whether you will find the women there, and then what exactly are those women doing at the decision-making table is also very key. So once we live in that awareness that, yes, we want the women to be there, we also want to monitor and see what exactly are we doing, because we have a mission. We have something to accomplish. We have a task. And for that reason, we shouldn't just be there because we want to count and tick the boxes. That brings me to another issue that was raised earlier, that raised the hairs around my ears and my head. And that is the issue of, if I could so say, women misbehaving. We have the right, like any other human being, to make mistakes. We are overly critical of ourselves sometimes. But I just want us to know that we are not homogeneous beings. We are different in our own respect. What will make another woman fall and rise again? When another woman falls, she might not be able to rise. And if we need all of us to be there, I was sharing with one of our suite officers that, look, what we call misbehavior of women, it's a box in itself that society has built around us. So when you step out of that box, you have misbehaved. And how do you assert yourself if you don't step out of that box? We've been multitasking, and we assume that every woman understands the issues around gender, women empowerment. And so when a woman goes offbeat, then we say, oh, she's a woman. She's supposed to know that she's to support a woman, a fellow woman. Not all women know. Not all women understand the issues. So if we are patient with each other in the learning process, we'll get to know that these are issues that we need to build support around. So having a strong support base for women at the formal workplace, informal workplace, it's very important for all of us to be able to grow. I want to touch finally on the issue of affirmative action. When you look at the act itself and the timelines we have set for ourselves, you want to be critical in measuring, in monitoring what the political parties are doing at every given time. And I will not stop reiterating this fact, because at the end of the day, when we come to measure and realize that the act has not achieved the things we wanted to achieve at the given times, we will really, really be very hard on ourselves and leadership. We are supposed to be having 30% to political leadership. Elections are over. The local level elections are over. The national elections are over. And so where to get, in fact, is the appointment. Appointments are almost over. So it means that we have to be aware, whether you are partisan or not, this should be of interest to you, to monitor what is happening at the party levels, so that we'll be able to take advantage of the issues that come. Our caregiving role, we multitask. It is not for anyone to judge us whether we are capable or not. We've been capable from the onset, if that is what society bequeathed us with, that women are supposed to be this. We cook, we do so many things at the same time. And the same time in the office, we are managing so many things. So who then questions us when it comes to women's capability and capacity? Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Well, again, thank you. Just to piggyback on what the Honorable Minister just said, talking about safe seats, that our traditional mother mentioned during Nkrumah's time. 60 years forward, if you see the idea hasn't gained currency, it's because perhaps in some countries, men have been very patronizing and condescending. And so it becomes a battle of whether to bequeath, should you accept, whether to fight, go in and fight. So the battle is there. But I guess one sure way is to encourage, through the national action plans, ministries of gender to encourage women in political parties and to see them rise. I say I'm a political animal. I've been active in the political parties that I've been a part of, and so we should encourage women. Aulin, I'm glad to see Aulin here. And if you want to know what to do and how to do it, I think women in leadership, like you said, let's tell our stories. Let's get to identify women who have been at the national level to encourage and build peace. The Women, Peace and Security Indicators. Let's look at some of the indices that we set aside. And in peacekeeping, now that we are here at Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Center, we had an India battalion, all women. So I think if you take from what Professor Mensah Bonsu was saying, you can perhaps begin to create your own model to see whether you can actually have a whole battalion go out there. Because India sent a battalion of women to Liberia as peacekeepers. So in that way, you would avoid the situation where you would just have women cooking the same cooking they were doing here. Is it that the food was not sweet here, and you have to go and cook it out there? But just to have a good blend. And in closing, while we're thanking you all for these very important questions, I think one of the things that we need to look at is the role of the media, now social media. I think someone this morning was saying women's voices were not heard. I don't think so. We just need to begin to constructively see how we can better place the voices and the content of those voices on the social media. If we are not mindful, that social media will undermine, and if it's not threatening, traditional media. So I think that we should be able to develop content. We should encourage the positive voices. Not that when someone is speaking recklessly, another woman should speak even more recklessly. I don't think we're competing for space in that regard, but I think that together we should be able to build upon that. Now, talking about our former president, Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, there's a center she is running, and she has a data hub. So she's collecting, and the center is involved in research. So they have a data hub that show the progression of women into the various public spaces. So again, I think that it's another way that the Ministry of Gender and the National Plan would be able to enhance women's participation at various levels and strata in society. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We'll take 2 last questions, and then that'll be it. I know we've actually gone a little beyond the time we planned to do this event, but definitely when the conversations are this good, you're able to manage a few more. So 2 questions, please. Yes. One at the back, and then you. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Right.
My name is Serana Kokoi Ajraku. I'm the founder of Breakthrough ADR Center and Foundation, and then a member of GACMA. In fact, I want to emphasize on what our mother, her ladyship, has said. She said a lot, but one thing that keeps ringing in my mind and my heart is that statement that she made, that if only one star is in the sky, we will not see well, and there will not be brightness as we want to. But if more stars are in the sky, that is when, even if it is a light off, we will be able to see well. Yes, I want us to emphasize on that statement very well. That sometimes, or where things are getting to now, I think, like she said, the young ones have to be introduced
into this women empowership places. Not only the young ones, but some are not very old, but they are idle. They are idle. They are potentials. They have gifts. They want to do something. But because maybe she said that they don't have the qualifications, the gifts are in them, the talents are in them, but they don't have the high-level certificates. So they fear to come forward, or they fear, they will be ignored. I think it's about time we looked at those things and then fixed those gifts in, so that they will not die and go to the grave with those gifts and talents that God has given them.
Right.
As our mothers are fading out, the young ones and the idle ones should also be involved, so that women will always be at the top. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We'll take a final question, and then, okay.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Numo Chawe Otrome, the second, Chawe Ulomokbong. I have this question for this entire guest body here. Speaking from the traditional aspect, I have realized that most of our women and the kind of ideas they bring on board is actually not accepted by most of our men. Speaking as an individual who sits in the midst of our key men in decision-making and decision-taking, I have realized that women are actually not allowed to come closer to the table. Whatever ideas they have, they are supposed to share those ideas with their men in the room. And then the men are supposed to come out to present these particular ideas. Personally, I have spoken to my mom, my siblings, I've empowered them to try to take up that mantle, to voice out whatever they want to say. But we realize that that is the kind of training that has been given to them. And for that reason, they always end up coiling in their shells, which I think it's very, very bad. So my question is, what can be done to empower these women to actually get up and stand for themselves to speak? Thank you so much.
All right. I'll give the last word to Madam Lavinia Adai-Mensah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I think we can't take any more. And I'm not sure we even have time for you to respond. But I would allow you, if you have something very pressing to say, then yes, and then I'll just close it. Yes,
I think just taking a cue from the last question, when we talk about gender equality, it can be very confusing to a lot of people. When we talk about women's empowerment, it can be very confusing to men and also to women. To women, it can, sometimes signify an opportunity to score points. To men, it can be something like, okay, I'm going to be emasculated. So I think it's on us to really distill the myth. We cannot do this journey or go on this journey without men. It is impossible to empower women or to really achieve equality without men. So it is on us to go out in the community to educate men, educate women, educate communities, make sure that we distill myths, carry people along. My sister here talked about numbers. It is a numbers game. We need more stars in the sky. And to get the more stars in the sky, we need to educate, we need to educate, we need to educate.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think on that note, we can bring the conversation to an end. It's been really rich. Okay, Prof.
What the gentleman in white talked about is the traditional, yes. What you are doing is good enough. Just keep at it. And in little corners, change will occur. Speaking as a woman, there's nothing more painful than going to a meeting, putting out ideas which are treated as if they are not important. Let a man repeat the same things. Suddenly, it's the wisest thing that has ever been said. We've all gone through the pain. We are pioneer groups, so we are bound to come up against these attitudes. But I assure you, if you keep doing what you are doing in your little corner, gradually these things will change.
Thank you. Let me just then check. Honorable Minister, Ambassador, do you have any final points?
Let me not call the country. I worked in 4 countries. But recently there was an election in one of these 4 countries. And it's a by-election. The 2 leading contenders, the woman is more educated, more experienced. The man is holding a current title, so it's a bicameral system where you have the lower and the upper house. And the man is aspiring to be a senator to go to the upper house. This woman had been like a governor in the county, and this former senator dies, and the perception is that the man says a woman's place is in the kitchen, and even behind the kitchen. And all the women, rose up to say this was very misogynistic. But the results, at the end of the day, all the men who mattered, who thought that this woman is so educated that they would put her in, everyone rose. The men rose against her and supported educate and be more educated. Because at what point are you going to look at a woman, what value she brings to the table, what's the education, what's the experience that she's bringing to the table that matters? So again, thank you, and keep at it, and let our women and men in the various sectors, and let the governments put effort, Madam Minister. Ministries have to do a lot of work.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say that to achieve gender parity is a collective responsibility. At least when you hear, you know that you are not supposed to just hear and stay with the knowledge, but you begin to analyze and assess things with a gender lens that will enable you to also contribute to our efforts towards, attaining gender parity. And so it is good enough that you are creating the awareness. It is even better once you start exposing them to the issues around gender. And then they will begin to imbibe it themselves. They will begin to talk about it, and then they will be able to take actions towards a gender parity or a gender equality or equity world, a fair world where everybody counts. And let's also talk about positive masculinity. Let's talk about it. It's very important. It will be one of the factors that will help us attain gender parity very quick. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you for sharing your insights. Yes, a round of applause for all of them. Thank you for sharing your insights, your perspectives, your experiences. Really appreciate also some of the honesty around the challenges from your personal perspectives. As I said, we need more time. So Australian High Commission, can we do this? You have 2 weeks session where we can really have a full conversation, because I think there are a number of things we couldn't discuss. But I think all in all, you've thrown a lot of positivity around how far we've come. There are still barriers, and we need to find ways of continuously surmounting these barriers. When we started, I laid the context of how the journey started, because currently we are in a different dispensation, unfortunately. Peace building itself is severely challenged. Now we are talking about peace through force. We are talking about transactional peace. Peace is brokered where there is something that somebody can get out of it. Unfortunately, it's impacted on resources. The geopolitics of the world is such that the whole frame has changed. And some of the frame conditions that propelled this advancement has shifted. And so we have more challenges. And in fact, some are even saying we are probably even retrogressing. And some of the people that have championed this, particularly from civil society, unfortunately, statistics are showing that within the next 6 months, 40% of NGOs will be closed down because there are no resources. And so how we continue to advance, with the implication of civil society that has been critical, is something that is challenged. So let's continue the conversation in our own spaces to see how we can have some of the creativity that you shared with us so that we can continue this journey amidst new world order and fragmentations and trust deficits that we are dealing with. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you.
I actually think our high-level panel deserves a much bigger applause, don't you? Thank you. Right. On that note, this brings us to the end of today's proceedings. I would like to thank all our distinguished speakers, our esteemed guests, and our partners for your presence, your insights, and your continued commitment to peace, inclusion, and democracy all across West Africa. Also to our media colleagues, thank you for covering this very important event. And to all viewers and listeners joining us via our partner stations, TV3, NewsWire Radio, and NewsWireGH.com, we thank you for being a part of this vital conversation. And for those who traveled to come for this very important conversation, we wish you safe travels. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon.